This is Dr. Andrew Doan. I just want to show some gameplays and the different degrees of violence. We have some mild violence up to extreme violence. So here's Minecraft, where a character is trapped and the trap door explodes. This is World of Warcraft, which is a mature-only game. And this is where a group in a dungeon is attacking the Scarlet Monastery. And they're attacking basically nuns and priests and religious individuals within the monastery, but they're bad guys. This is a scene where Call of Duty, and it's very controversial here, this is probably more than R-rated, but you're playing a terrorist and your goal is to mow down groups of civilians. And this is extremely graphic, and you can tell the gamer when they do play these games, the blood pressure does increase to 140 or 190 over 140 diastolic, and it's amazing. But notice how the game tells the player how to reload as well. So empty the clip, and then the game says reload. So these games, like Lieutenant Colonel Grossman has been saying, are teaching our kids how to kill and train them how to kill. So therefore, these mature rated games should not be allowed in the hands of an 8-year-old or 10-year-olds, and I know so many parents who let them play. This is Grand Theft Auto 4, showing a montage of headshots. And notice that these headshots are directed towards law enforcement individuals. And it's amazing is that when I give these talks around the country, I ask the kids, what happens when you shoot an individual in an arm or a leg? Well, they know that they don't die. So the kids, when they are allowed to play these games, are being trained through repetition, through simulation, through playing these games, that a headshot or a upper body torso shot results in a kill. And this individual is extremely skilled and is aiming for the head.
Joining us now is one of the foremost world experts on violence and media. He is Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman, former psychology professor at West Point, author of the Pulitzer Prize-nominated On Killing, the Psychological Cost of Learning to Kill in War and in Society. And what is it?
Yeah, that new factor that was never there before is violent visual imagery inflicted upon children, particularly the video games. Lou, I'm our nation's #1 trainer of law enforcement. Man hours, contact hours, classes, any way you want to measure it. I'm one of our leading trainers of military. I've got a best-selling video series for preparing the individual citizen to be able to use deadly force at the moment of truth. And from all those perspectives, we know that simulations and visualization and mental rehearsal is absolutely essential to performance on the battlefield. And the video games are providing the exact same thing to the children without the safeguards. And then, Lou, when you add the ingredient of children who have any difficulty, autistic child, mentally ill child, the learning disabled child, the impact is even greater. The video games are addictive, they're seductive. They create sleep deprivation, and sleep deprivation is a major factor in mental illness, depression, and suicide. The little boy in Paducah, Kentucky had never fired a pistol before in his life. Stole a .22 caliber pistol from a neighbor's house, fired 2 magazines of ammo on a previous night, comes in his school and opens fire in a prayer circle out in front of the school, Paducah, Kentucky. He fires 8 shots. He gets 8 kids on 8 hits on 8 different kids, 5 of them headshots, the other 3 upper torsos. And he had trained on the video games. Google video games and marksmanship. Doug Gentile, a recent research demonstrating irrefutably that the video games teach marksmanship skills. Also, these are not video games, they're murder simulators. They're mass murder simulators. Nobody ever picks up the video game, kills one person, and walks away. They're conditioned to kill them all. They're conditioned to keep on going until something stops you. But after they kill the last person, after there's nobody else to kill, and after reality sets in, the magnitude of the horror hits them, and the repercussions hit them. And one way to escape in many video games is to kill yourself. Many video games, the way to restart the game is when everything looks bad, kill yourself and game over.
Oh my God.
So video games are the trainers. I tell my cops, I say, you know what the simulator does for you. You're in the simulator, and the bad guy does this, and boom, you shoot. Stimulus response, stimulus response. And when the bad guy does it in real life, boom, you shoot without conscious thought. You have done what we call precognitive loading. You don't even have to think. A bad guy does this, boom, I'm going to shoot. Well, they have been in their simulators. The gangbangers played Grand Theft Auto since they were 5 years old, every spare minute of every day, practicing blowing cops' heads off. Across America, we have an explosion of gang violence, and they train from their youngest days with the video games. And the gangs are our future. And the gangs weave in completely with the cartels. We have millions of kids at a gut basic level. Human death and suffering is the same as their popcorn, their candy bar, their girlfriend's perfume, their soda. And what do they do when somebody dies in a horrible way on the screen? They cheer and they laugh. They are not just desensitized. They have been taught to associate reward and pleasure with human death and suffering from the youngest days. And then we put them in the video games. We turn killing into a conditioned response. In the 1990s, I was a West Point psych professor. I helped run the rat lab. The dumbest cadet could teach the dumbest rat in an hour. Lights on, press the bar, going to get food. Our kids have been taught hundreds of thousands of times. Blow people's heads off in explosions of blood and you get points. They have been operantly and classically conditioned to associate reward and pleasure with human death and suffering.
Around the planet, children are committing crimes never seen before in history. And we know what it is. Violent visual imagery inflicted upon children. Protect your little ones. Then why would you let them watch it on TV? Why would you let them see the dead body on CSI? Why would you let them watch that violent movie where people die? Strictly enforce the rating systems. If you have a 10-year-old playing a T-rated game, the people who made that game say 13 and above only. M-rated games are 17 and above only. There are sick games this industry is putting out there. If you have a 15-year-old or a 12-year-old playing an M-rated game, then your standard is lower than the standard of this industry that's putting these games out there. Their ratings are the bare minimum that we should be enforcing. Limit the times, enforce the rating systems, but the one new factor around the world, we have the brain scan studies, we have the correlational studies, there is no doubt. The one thing all the school killers had in common is violent visual imagery. They dropped out of life and they immersed themselves in the world of video games.